skin and try not bringing hate to your disciple. So don't you be offended when Granddaddy defended. This flag I'm waving says I'm staying free. Don't tread on me, no. Don't tread on me, no.
Hello and welcome to the Ryan Mack Show. I am your host, Ryan Mack. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. You can join me on Facebook. Twitter is live. Rumble is up and coming. I still have to figure out the kinks there. It's a little hard to upload live. Today's episode, if you've been following along, you've seen the thumbnail up at the corner of YouTube. Hit that. And it's going to be about separation of church and state. Now, before the lefties get in here, if there is any listening, I just want to explain to you that separation of church and state does not mean what you say and think it means. I'm going to clarify soon. If you're listening, also go live. If you're not live, you can catch me afterwards on Spotify, Apple, and Google, some other places. I think I'm on podcasts. So let's jump right in. It's been a controversial issue, this idea of separation of church and state, where the government should not get involved with your religious beliefs. It's what our country was founded on. Our founding fathers were very explicit in the idea from separation of church and state. The fact that the King of England literally developed its own church, an official church, and they wanted and forced the idea that you belong to the state religion. And our founders and those who fled England's rule decided, no, we are a free people. We're going to start a free country based on the idea that you can be faithful to whatever religion you subscribe to. You don't have to subscribe to what the government tells you to. And that goes for everything in government. You don't have to listen to what the government tells you. You have rights in this country, and that stands for something. But this idea of separation of church and state is a hot topic in our country, and one that leftists and most people construe as you can't talk about God in government. You can't talk about God in schools. You can't be holding a position of power in prayer, and you can't pray, and you can't force prayer on anybody. None of that is happening. Those in Congress who are Christians, who are prayerfully and dutifully upholding their religious beliefs, don't shove it down your throat. But this idea that this country was not founded on faith and traditional principles and the Judean Christian values is a lie, and the leftists will have you believe it. But before I go any further and dive into it, I just want to give you some motivational messaging from our Vice President, Kamala Harris. She has words of wisdom.
And be unburdened by what has been. You know, what can be unburdened by what has been. 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 What we can see, what we believe can be unburdened by what has been. What 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 can be unburdened by what we have been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
I can't do it anymore. But there's your motivational message from Kamala Harris. You can be unburdened by what has been. So there's that. All right. So earlier this week, Speaker Johnson was under attack by leftists in the media, and quite frankly, everybody that doesn't believe that you should be praying on Capitol Hill. But he came under fire about separation of church and state, and whether or not it should be a thing, and whether or not it is a thing. So what I have for you is his reaction, and listen carefully to how he explains the misunderstanding.
First day that you had been sworn in, it appeared that you were praying on the floor with a number of other congressmen, and there's a question about the separation of church and state. We often talk on this show about folks about whether religion should play a role inside a company, whether people should be allowed to pray inside a company. There's one thing to pray outside and to have your faith, and there's a great importance in that. But how do you think about that, and how do you think about the public perception of that?
Listen, faith, our deep religious heritage and tradition, is a big part of what it means to be an American. When the founders set this system up, they wanted a vibrant expression of faith in the public square because they believed that a general moral consensus and virtue was necessary to maintain this grand experiment in self-governance that we created, a government of, by, and for the people. We don't have a king in charge. We don't have a middleman. So we've got to keep morality amongst us so that we have accountability. And so they wanted faith to be a part of that. The separation of church and state is a misnomer. People misunderstand it. Of course, it comes from a phrase that was in a letter that Jefferson wrote. It's not in the Constitution. And what he was explaining is they did not want the government to encroach upon the church. Not that they didn't want principles of faith to have influence on our public life. It's exactly the opposite. Washington said, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. And John Adams came next and he said, our Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. They knew that it would be important to maintain our system. And that's why I think we need more of that. Not an establishment of any national religion, but we need everybody's vibrant expression of faith because it's such an important part of who we are as a nation.
And he is right on. It is a very important part of our founding principles. And for him to take criticism on that, it's unjust and unfair. You have leftists in Congress screaming their heads off about how you can't be a Christian. Meanwhile, you have them heeing and hawing about how great Palestinians are and that Israel is the big bad monster. And nobody calls them out on their anti-American views. Here's my thoughts on Congress and as a whole. You can believe what you want. This is how this country was founded. If you're in Congress and you're a Muslim or you're Protestant or you're Catholic, you can have those beliefs. What you can't do is call out somebody else for being a Christian and espousing the fact that we have those core principles in our documents and on our values, and then you turn around and criticize them. You want your religious freedom, except when it's not allowed and it's somebody else's that you don't agree with. Makes sense. So it's no surprise that leftists are jumping down Mike Johnson's throat for wanting to put those principles back in our form of government. Now, he's not sitting there and thumping you over the head with a Bible and saying, we will do this way. But what he's going to do is let his governing and his leadership lead the way, and by principle of his faith. He's not going to make laws that will force you to own a Bible. He's not going to make laws that will force you to subscribe to the Christian faith. He is upholding the family and the faith traditions of our country. Congress has made it clear you cannot make new laws respect to forming a religion as a state. He's not doing that. He's simply guiding his principles through the speakership role, through his core faith. That's what he's doing. He's letting his principles speak for itself. The country could use a whole lot of Jesus, to be honest with you. So he's not exactly wrong in getting back to those principles. Of course, you're going to have more leftists and more media publications coming after him. Now, I come across some videos here that some lean left, some, I don't know if they're center or right, but here's some more examples of how they disagree with the separation of church and state. And then I'll get into the letter from Jefferson, what Mike alluded to, and the other founding fathers and what they had to say. So here is another video from KGNS.TV. Don't know where this is from. Let's see if this will play.
When the founding fathers framed our Constitution, they made sure to prioritize a separation of church and state. American University law professor Stephen Wormiel explains.
The country was founded by people who fled England, where there was an official church, and who many of whom felt repressed or worse, persecuted.
With the separation of church and state also came the First Amendment, the freedom to practice any religion without the enforcement of an official one. Newly elected Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, espouses Christianity.
Mike Johnson is a devout, godly man.
A man of great faith. He's a man of faith.
But some worry his Christianity is guiding decisions that will affect everyone, including non-Christians. Democrat Jamie Raskin tweeted concern, saying, Speaker Mike Johnson, anti-choice, anti-LGBTQ, anti-gun safety, anti-democracy. This is what a theocracy looks like.
The freedom part of it is that you're free and other people are free to not have to be afflicted by however it is you are choosing to express your faith.
I don't really think his views about his own religion ought to be what's determining the direction of our society.
As it stands, Christians make up about 57% of the American population. According to Pew Research, 73% of Americans polled believe that religion should be kept separate from government policies. In Washington, I'm Molly Martinez.
So you have another source, and you can see how the media is trying to twist what Mike Johnson is talking about. Again, he's not talking about crafting laws to force you to be uphold Christian values. He's just not going to apologize for his own faith, and he's allowed to state it. He doesn't have to make any laws to force you to do anything against your own faith. And that's part of his right to be able to say he's a Christian. Now, he can sit there and call a spade, and leftists aren't going to call him out for that. They will. And the media is always going to call you out. But you have to stand strong on your principles. He is a man of principles, whether you like him or not, for the fiscal decisions that he has made as speaker. We've never had a true biblical worldview in Congress. And I think that's important. It's to distinguish that he's not going to make laws to go against what's in the First Amendment. He's going to make laws based on conviction and guiding principles in which this country was founded on. That's what he's going to uphold. This isn't new. This is what our congressmen and leaders in Washington were supposed to do. Uphold the Constitution, uphold the Bill of Rights, and uphold our founding principles. You can do both and not go against what it says in the Constitution. So there you have that source chiming in, and you can see already how the media is twisting the reaction from his belief on separation of church and state. It does not mean that you can't talk about God. It does not mean that you get to force someone to be of your religion. It meant quite explicitly that the government cannot make laws or make an official religion. And it means that religion organizations cannot tell the government what to do. Now, there has been some Supreme Court cases in the past that have split decisions on this issue. Most notably, the last one was involving prayer after football games. There was a coach that sued for not being able to pray freely after football games, and he won his case. The Supreme Court stepped in and said, you can't stop him from praying to himself. He's not forcing anybody else to pray with him. In fact, the entire team prayed with him, but not because he told them to, because they willingly went after and prayed with him. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was forced to. And he made that case. And the leftists will cry their eyes out. He's not supposed to pray on the field. But that's not how this works. I want to thank all those for jumping in and chiming in the comments section. We've got a new one subscribing. Oklahoma Chicken Cam, thanks for commenting I got my sound up there. Thank you. Yes, this is important too. Leftists tend to twist words until the words are almost meaningless. Yeah, that's exactly what they do. They twist your words into meaningless things. Racism, for example, it used to be a prominent word and it meant something. But when leftists overtake it and use it for their own narrative, it becomes meaningless. Now you say racism, it only means you call somebody a racist and it's because you disagree with them. So that's what leftists do. Good comment there. So we've seen media and how their reactions to Johnson's view. We've also seen and heard from him talking about the letter in which this is coming in conversation. So Thomas Jefferson, he writes a letter to Dansbury Baptist Association in the state of Connecticut. Now, this isn't a letter. This isn't in the Constitution. This was basically an assertion that this idea of separation of church and state should be a thing, but the state should not establish a religion, nor should it prohibit the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation of church and state. That's what he said in his letter. He did not say, you cannot talk about God in the halls of Congress. You cannot talk about Muhammad in the halls of Congress. He was stating, you can't form a national religion. You can't prohibit others from exercising their religion. That's the separation in which he meant from church and state. But you'll have leftists utilizing that and saying, nope, you can't talk about religions in public funding schools. Now, there have been cases in which public funding has been an issue when it comes to private versus public schools and the teaching of faith and the Bible teaching. The Supreme Court stepped in and tried to divide those issues. But those are separate issues from the matter. When it comes to public money going to public schools, you do have to be careful. But I think the Supreme Court got it wrong. I think public money doesn't matter in a sense of what you should be able to teach. Because look at what they're doing now with public funds. They're teaching your kids, if you don't believe with this, then you're racist, you're bigoted, and you're homophobic. They're using your tax dollars to teach anti-American courses, to teach LGBTQ history, and to plant critical race theory down your throat. And there's no backlash from that. They're using public dollars to teach something that most of us don't agree with, that should be taught in schools. But that's okay. So you see, the leftists love to twist things that they don't agree with. So I'm going to read you the letter and see if it makes sense, and comment and see what your thoughts are. Gentlemen, the affectionate sentiments of esteem and probation which you are so good as to express towards me on behalf of the Danbury Baptist Association give me the highest satisfaction. My duties dictate a faithful and zealous pursuit of the interests of my constituents, and in proportion as they are persuaded of my fidelity to those duties, the discharge of them becomes more and more pleasing. Believing with you that religion is a matter that lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions. I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should, quote, make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Adhering to this expression of the supreme will of the nation in behalf of the rights of the conscience, I shall see with sincere satisfaction the progress of those sentiments which tend to restore to man all his natural rights, convinced he has no natural right in opposition to his social duties. I reciprocate your kind prayers for the protection and blessing of the common Father and Creator of man, and tender you for yourselves and your religious association assurances of my high respect and esteem. Thomas Jefferson, January 1st, 1802. Now, Thomas Jefferson was also an atheist. He was also much of the line of a secularism. So he's going to subscribe to that basic principle, leave church and state separate. But the leftist, again, Oklahoma Chicken Cam called it out. They twisted the words. It's not in the Constitution. He was simply stating you can't stop somebody from exercising their religion, and government shall not make a new law with respect to a state religion. That's legitimately what he was saying. It was no more black and white than in his letter to the church. This was a Baptist church he was writing it. He wouldn't have written this letter to them. He wasn't writing to them saying, well, yeah, don't you worry, I'll go ahead and separate you from government involvement. He was writing to them upholding the principles. And the very fact that he was writing this favors the religious. He was upholding their respects. Stop trying to force us to subscribe to one religion only, but also stop us stop the government from getting involved with our religion. Religion cannot be mandated nor illegalized by government fiat. Some religious practices can be illegalized, polygamy, human sacrifice, but a religion cannot be. Yes, that's right. Agreed. They are using terms and redefining them to match their beliefs or goals. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, it is insane, and they are insane. This is what leftists do. So the very idea that Jefferson called for a separation of church and state, meaning that you can't talk about God in schools, and it's BS at its finest, and that's what it is. So here, another organization that is far left, and I mean far left. It's weird because the name says something kind of most Americans could get behind. They always do this. Leftists always hijack organizations to make it look fancy, and then they really put their leftist, Marxist, socialist, communist ways behind it. So here's an organization called Americans United, and I've come across them many times on X, and man, are they wacky. So this is a video on, it's about a minute long. We can listen to it here. And let me just preface it by saying that they're tying the abortion issue to separation of church and state. And it's the same principle that I just laid out to you, that these people don't care what's in the laws. They don't care what's in our founding documents. They will spin what's in our documents against you to make you think that, oh, wait, this is really what it meant. They're not judges. They're not historical people that can decipher what is accurate and true. They have no place in this. They are activists, and they are lying, and they want you to know that their way of thinking is correct and you're the extremist. So here is, let's see if I can share this video. This is Americans United, and this is their take on the core principles, supposedly in their way.
States of America was founded on certain core principles.
Among those are the freedom of religion
and church-state separation.
Church-state separation.
Church-state separation.
But now, religious extremists and their lawmaker allies
are forcing all of us to live by their narrow beliefs.
Abortion bans impose one narrow religious doctrine on everyone.
Abortion bans violate America's promise.
America's promise.
America's promise of religious freedom. Abortion bans violate the separation of church and state.
These extremists are abusing religion.
Abusing religion.
Abusing religion to hurt us.
To deny us our basic human rights.
Americans United.
Americans United.
Americans United. Americans United.
Americans United for separation of church and state is fighting back.
Right now, Americans United and National Women's Law Center
are suing Missouri to end its abortion ban
and uphold church-state separation.
Americans United is fighting for freedom without favor
and equality without exception.
Americans United is fighting for our freedom to live as ourselves and believe as we choose.
What?
Support this fight by donating to Americans United today at au.org.
At au.org.
At au.org.
Because the road we're headed down is way too dangerous.
There we have it. It's way too dangerous. It's way too dangerous. We have to subscribe to the Americans United play on words. So there you have it. A leftist organization forcing their way on you, saying that abortion is a separation of church and state issue. It's a religious issue. But I thought they weren't religious when it comes to abortions. It's not. If it's a religion issue, then why are they calling it healthcare? Why are they calling it reproductive care? That's not a baby, according to them. So how can abortion be a religious issue if you don't subscribe to the idea that there is a baby and that life is being conceived? If you don't believe that life is being conceived at conception and formed, and that is a baby, then you can't sit there and say they're taking away our freedoms, they're taking away and our ability as and a right as Americans. That's not freedom. Sorry, that's murder. And our founding principles endowed by a creator, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, life being the most important one, that's taking away life. That's taking away freedom of that life. That's another issue we can get into at a different time. It's a very controversial topic as well, and I think I touched about it in other episodes. But there you have it again, an example of these leftists hijacking a principle in our documents and using it for their own causes. They're making millions off these causes, linking abortion to separation of church and state. It's not a religious issue. For some, it can be. If you're a Christian and you are up the Catholic faith and you are up on the faith that understands that life is sacred, then yes, it becomes a religious principle. But for the left to hijack that and make it a religious issue altogether and then tie that into separation of church and state, that's illogical, and it's the stupidest attempt to justify it. So there you're going to have it as a leftist narrative. We need to separate church and state because abortions need to be a thing. Again, makes no sense. I'd like to classify voluntary abortion as human sacrifice. Absolutely. Whether you agree or not on abortion issue is one thing, but it should be left to the states as the Constitution and as the Supreme Court has rightly done. All right, so I did some research on some stats. I know that not a lot of my episodes carry some stats, but I wanted to bring some numbers in on you. So I found Pew Research. Okay, these are top 10 facts that are about religion and government in the United States. Kind of a fun list to go through. We can talk about it. I don't know if Pew Research, and you can chime in if it's a lefty organization or not, but I thought it was kind of interesting to look at some of the numbers. They, for the most part, have been reputable. I think there's some other Pew Research polls out there. Number one, nearly 3/4 of U.S. adults, 73%, say religion should be kept separate from government policies. So this was according to a survey conducted in the spring of 2022. Just 25% say government policies should support religious values and beliefs, while the majority of Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents, 84%, and Republicans and Republican leaders, 61%, say religion should be kept separate from government policies. Republicans are far more likely to say government should support religious values, 38% versus 16%. So again, you still have a conservative versus liberal, not even liberal, Marxist idea. Conservatives say that we should let our faith guide our principles, and you have far more Democrats saying, leave my body alone, leave the church out of it. You have them ripping and clawing their eyes out. That's who we're dealing with. Number two, the Johnson Amendment limits political activity by religious organizations, and most Americans, 70%, want churches and other houses of worship to stay out of politics. According to a 2021 analysis, a survey conducted, the presidential race in July 2020 found that some U.S. adults who had attended religious services in the month prior or watched services online and said that they heard sermons expressing support for then Donald Trump, 9%, or then candidate Joe Biden, 6%. Others had heard sermons expressing opposition to Trump and Biden. Meanwhile, 4 in 10 had heard sermons discussing the importance of voting, protesting, or other forms of political engagement. My idea on that is that I think, and this is going to be controversial also, I think it's the duty of the churches to stand up and get involved, not to an extent be like an arm of a political ideology. But if, let's say, if you're conservative, by and large, you're going to subscribe to faith. You're going to have a faith in Christ, and you're going to have faith in some kind. You're going to want your churches to play an active role towards kind of policy making. It's not an issue of separation church and state. You want principles of the Judean Christian value to guide America's not legislature, but like the way they operate. For 250 some odd years, we've operated under this guiding principle that your faith is more important than anything else. And our founding fathers, though some of them were atheists, some of them, a lot more than half of them, were rightful, faithful, and great men. And that a religion and faith in general, Christian faith, was important to them. And that's, God is in everything. It's not in the Constitution, but it's in our Bill of Rights. It's in our national anthem. It's on our money. If the government wanted to keep God out of it, they could have easily taken those things out of other forms. So my take on this hit is that I think that's important for churches to get back involved and say, you know what, enough is enough. We are a country of faith, and faith should guide our principles as a nation. Number 3, the Supreme Court ruled in 1962 that it's unconstitutional for a teacher to lead a class in prayer at a public school, but 3 in 10 U.S. adults said a March 2021 survey that public school educators should be allowed to do this. A considerably larger share of Americans, 46%, said teachers in public schools should not be allowed to lead students in any kind of prayers, with Democrats twice as likely as Republicans to say this, 60 to 30%. Another 24% did not prefer either option. So again, you have Democrats versus Republicans. Those are the two major parties in our country. Democrats, although there are moderates and there are probably Christian, a lot of faithful Democrats, I don't know how, but more often than not, don't want anything to do with praying in school. Among U.S. public school age 13 to 17, 41% said in the 2019 survey that it's appropriate for a teacher to lead a class of prayer, including 29% of teenagers who knew that this practice was banned, but said it was acceptable nevertheless. So it's banned, and according to a 1962 ruling, but more and more schools are opting to allow prayer of some kind, either before or after school, or even in areas of the school. You can pray, you can, nobody's forcing you to not to, or to pray. It's encouraging to see teenagers open up about that and think that even though it's banned, they still think it's acceptable. So we got some comments here before I continue. Sometimes abortion is human sacrifice. Other times it's a damn difficult choice that should be left between a woman and God. Yeah, you're right. Anyone else feel like the leftists are playing high school? By this mean spouting off things that they themselves may not believe, but since others around them, they're spreading idiocy. Yeah, I agree. They are, a lot of times they don't agree with anything they say, but they feel like it's the cool thing to say. Here's another one. Limiting the free speech of religious organizations is a violation of the free speech of said organization. Yeah, absolutely. Some good questions piling up there and good comments. Yeah, I agree with those. Leftists like to play the favorite card, like whatever's the popular. Hold your finger to the wind, and we'll go ahead and shout it. I gotta believe half of them probably don't even believe what they're saying is true. Here we go. Number 4. Again, these are 10 facts that the Pew Research Foundation has come up with between government and God and religion. Americans are divided on whether local governments should be allowed to put religious symbols on public property. So, again, as a whole, the research showed that we're kind of half and half. Should a praying statue of Jesus be allowed on a government property? Some say yes, some say no. According to a March 2021 survey, nearly 4 in 10 adults say cities and towns should be allowed to do this. 35% say religious symbols should be off public property. Roughly a quarter, about 26%, don't favor either option. So you have a little bit under that saying they don't really care. So 39% say they should, 35%. So it's pretty even about who thinks they should not be allowed. Some Supreme Court cases have determined that religious displays on government property are constitutional in certain contexts. Other cases have found that such displays can be endorsements of religion violating the First Amendment. So some cases have gone one way and some cases have gone another. They've decided that based on the facts of those cases. Number 5, while the U.S. Constitution does not mention God, nearly all state constitutions reference either God or the divine. According to a 2017 analysis, God also appears in the Declaration of Independence, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the U.S. currency. For the leftist out there, if God or religion wasn't important to our guiding principles, why was it in the Declaration of Independence? I'll wait. Why wasn't the Pledge of Allegiance? We are one nation under God. It's on the U.S. currency. Look at a quarter, look at a dollar. In God we trust. If you don't like religion in politics or religion in government, hand over your cash. If you don't like God, saying in God we trust in your money, you shouldn't be having it, right? You don't agree with it, don't use it. I'll gladly take some of it. Number 6, Christmas Day is the only federal holiday that's also a religious holiday. Although many Americans view Christians as a cultural holiday, Christmas is a cultural holiday too. It is a federal holiday and it is a religious holiday to those that belong to the Christian faith. Congress made Christmas, along with 4th of July, Thanksgiving, and New Year's Day, an unpaid holiday for federal DC workers in 1870. A later bill extended these as a paid vacation days for all government employees, so now it's a paid federal holiday. Courts have upheld Christmas Day's constitutionality, arguing that federal office closures do not coerce citizens to engage in religious activities. So they've ruled that, yeah, it's allowed to be a federal holiday because no one's closing of the offices doesn't mean you have to go out and go to church. So that can stand. Other efforts to recognize other religious holidays, such as the Muslim Eid al-Fitr, have been unsuccessful to date. Now, we are a country of freedom of religion, and there are a pretty good amount of Muslim faithfuls here. But that's the idea behind our country's founding documents. You are free to exercise your religion, but I would argue that you can do so, but not at the level that spews or, I guess I'm walking that back, that subscribes to the idea that anti-American and hatred for American values as well. You can be Muslim, you can be Hindu, you can be whatever you want, a Buddhist, you can be atheist, whatever. But my thing is with that, fine. But the minute you start avowing to principles like jihadists and terrorists and anti-American things, and you want to do harm to America like the Middle East does, then you're off. Then you're cut off. Sorry. Freedom of religion, unless it's to murder millions of Americans. Number 7, almost all U.S. presidents, including Joe Biden, have been Christian. Ponder that for a second, lefties. Biden is the only second Catholic president after John F. Kennedy, while the vast majority of others have been Protestant, most often Episcopalian or Presbyterian. 2 of our most famous presidents, Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln, had no formal religious affiliation. Most presidents have been sworn in with a Bible. I could just hear the lefty heads exploding now. And they traditionally seal their oath of office with the phrase, "So help me God," even though Congress a few years ago tried to remove that from their oath. And mostly, when I said Congress, it was the Democrats who want to remove "So help me God," because, why would you want to uphold your oath and swear under the Bible? Roughly half Americans feel it is that either is very or somewhat important for a president to have strong religious beliefs. So it's about either or. They don't really care. So obviously, if you're a Christian, you would like your president to have some kind of faithfulness. If you're an atheist, you probably don't want him to. I don't know. Number 8, Congress has always been overwhelmingly Christian, and roughly 9 in 10 representatives, that's 88%, and the current Congress, including 99% of Republicans and 78% of Democrats, identify as Christian, according to a January 2021 analysis. Congress is both more heavily Protestant than the U.S. population overall, 55% versus 40, and are more heavily Catholic. Yes, the famous Joe Biden, who is a Catholic and also pro-abortion. So there's that. Number 9, the Constitution guarantees that religion can never be a requirement for holding public office, but most Americans don't know this. I didn't know this, but I also didn't think it was that big a deal because I knew that it shouldn't be a requirement. I mean, there's other requirements for holding office, but that you don't have to be of religious holding to hold a public office. According to 2019 Pew Research Center survey, when asked in a multiple choice questions what the Constitution says about religion, only 27% of adults are able to correctly identify that no religious test is necessary to hold public office. Many U.S. adults incorrectly select that the Constitution requires federal office holders to affirm that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, 15%. That the Constitution requires federal office holders to be sworn in on the Holy Bible, 12%. Or that the Constitution says nothing about religion as it relates to federal office holders. Another 31% say they are not sure what the Constitution says about this. So there's some information there. It's interesting to see that half here didn't really know. Well, 27% are able to correctly identify that there's no religious test. That's kind of low. And finally, number 10, Americans are divided on the extent to which the country's laws should reflect biblical teachings. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Roughly half of adults say that Bible should influence U.S. laws, either a great deal, 23%, or some, 26%, and more than a quarter say the Bible should prevail over the will of the people if the two are at odds. According to a February 2020 survey, half of Americans, meanwhile, say the Bible shouldn't influence U.S. laws, as much as 19% or 31%. So there's your Pew Research numbers there. That's a lot of numbers thrown at you, but that's what I got for you. So there's a whole lot of meaning behind these messages. So with all of this, separation of church and state, when doing research, careful what sites you use for your research to come up with an idea of what it means. I had to dig and dig and dig to find the true idea of separation of church and state. It's tied up in the Constitution as Congress shall make no laws with respect to religion or prohibit the exercise thereof. It's not explicit in the Constitution. It was a phrase that was garnered from the letter from Thomas Jefferson. And if you do Google searches on you're going to get a whole laundry list of lefty organizations saying this should be separated, that should be separated. We shouldn't have church and state, and we shouldn't do this. You shouldn't allow this. So be careful. Do your own research on if you're looking up for definitions of things. I know I have to find about 100 different sources before I actually vindicate which ones are actually accurate. But the Constitution's a great source. The Bill of Rights are a great source. The founding documents, such as the letters, the Federalist Papers, are a great source of information from our founders. They will have the information that they actually written to help you understand. And there's like an idiot guide to the Constitution too that can help you understand some of the amendments better too. So there's another comment here. Christ and prayer needs to be incorporated in everything we say and do. That's the main reason why things have gotten as bad as they have. People are trying to remove Christ when God should be the center. Yes, absolutely. So many things that we do, and that we should be doing as Christians, God should be our forefront. And it's easy to say that and then, not follow it. But if we're going to get back to civility and our guiding principles and take this country back from that leftist hack that are running this place, it starts with our foundation and our principles. We were a Judean Christian country founded on God, family, and faith. And our laws and our principles guided our nation forward such that it prospered. When this country was 80 to 90% Christian faith, it prospered. Now you have as low as 70% say that they are Christians today. There's been a lack of Christ and a lack of acknowledgement of reading the Bible and diving into the Word is why we are having the problems we are, I believe, to this day. And to end the show on a lighter note, it is almost Thanksgiving. Thank you for following. Thank you for sharing, liking, commenting. Please subscribe to the Ryan Mac Show on Facebook, or follow on Facebook. You can subscribe on YouTube. Like I said earlier, Rumble is on its way. If you can't catch me live, mostly Sunday nights or Sunday evenings, I will try to be live because I'm after some of my friends on the radio station. I will be live after them. Kev Ferris is Speechless. The DPB show from 1 to 3 on Cities 92.9. I will generally be available live stream between anywhere from 5 to 6 to 7 on Sunday evenings. If there's a chance that I have interviews or special guests, I will probably prioritize the slots around their availability. So those will just be coming at a future advances. But generally, you can catch the podcast every Sunday or Saturday, give or take the schedule for it. But I try to be as consistent as I can. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, right? All right. So let's talk about Thanksgiving. There's some 9 facts that I came across about Thanksgiving. It's a time for Thanksgiving, obviously. I'm ready for Thanksgiving. I love to eat. I don't know about you guys, but I love to eat. And if there's a lot of food to be had, I will be there. So if you've got food, I will show up. So with that, here are 9 facts. The first Thanksgiving was celebrated in 1621, just a few days past Joe Biden's birthday. Oh, I'm sorry. Over a 3-day harvest festival. It included 50 pilgrims, 90 Wampanoag Indians, and lasted 3 days. It is believed by historians that only 5 women were present. So there you have it, feminists. You still weren't prioritized. Turkey wasn't on the menu at first Thanksgiving. Venison, duck, goose, oysters, lobster, eel, and fish were likely served, alongside pumpkins and cranberries, not pumpkin pie or cranberry sauce. Abraham Lincoln proclaimed Thanksgiving a national holiday on October 3rd, 1863. Sarah Josepha Hale, the woman who wrote Mary Had a Little Lamb, convinced Lincoln to make Thanksgiving a national holiday after writing letters for 17 years. So thank you, Sarah, for making it a national holiday. The history of U.S. presidents pardoning turkeys is patchy. Harry Truman is often credited with being the first president to pardon a turkey, but that's not quite true. He was the first to receive a ceremonial turkey from the National Turkey Federation, and he had it for dinner. JFK was the first to let a Thanksgiving turkey go, followed by Richard Nixon, who sent this turkey to a petting zoo. Okay. George H.W. Bush is the president who formalized the turkey pardoning tradition in 1989. There are 4 towns in the United States named Turkey. Bet you didn't know that. They can be found in Arizona, Texas, Louisiana, and North Carolina. The average number of calories consumed on Thanksgiving is 4,500. I'd like to think my number is closer to 10, but that's just me. That's the average. Butterball answers more than 100,000 turkey cooking questions via their Butterball Turkey Hotline each November and December. 100,000 turkey questions. The tradition of football on Thanksgiving began in 1876 with a game between Yale and Princeton. The first NFL games were played on Thanksgiving in 1920, and more than 54 million Americans are expected to travel during the Thanksgiving holiday this year. That's up 4.8 from last year. So there you have it. 9 facts about Thanksgiving. All right. So yes, eat more turkey. Yeah, absolutely. I favor that. So if you like the show, please subscribe on YouTube, follow along on Facebook. Thank you guys so much for commenting. Share this out with your normie friends. I have a small army, but growing. Oklahoma Chicken Cam, please spread the word on YouTube and elsewhere. Thanks so much for coming on and joining. Let it rip. Share with your friends. I'm trying to grow my voice out there as well. So thanks for coming on the Ryan Mac Show, and we'll see y'all next week.